Well, I'm Heinrich Klingenberg. For many years, I've been working in hydrogen technology, and at the moment, I'm with Hamburg Invest. And now I want to present to you what we are currently doing, what kind of projects we have within Hamburg. I have a problem with the sound at the moment. I cannot hear you, unfortunately. Can you hear me? Yes, we hear you very well. Then let me just continue. I don't hear you at the moment, so let me just present my charts. The first chart shall illustrate, using the example of the harbor in Hamburg, where we are standing at the moment in strategic terms. Let's take a look back to shed light on the issue of hydrogen in mobility. What are the essential topics we need to deal with? From the past, we know that alongside with the costs and the economies of scale, which means that we can overcome the issue of cost, of course, there is also the issue of demand, because hydrogen will only make sense if we don't only do individual small projects, but also work on a large scale in various areas, linking up different energies, providing hydrogen in the necessary volumes. And using the example of mobility in Hamburg, we see that we are cooperating in a bundled way. For example, with a focus on industry like the steel industry, but also a few other ones, not only in the metal sector, but in the sector of energy as a whole. We have developed an ecosystem which is apt to tackle the problems within the scope of mobility and to find solutions for that matter. Still another problem we have faced all the while was to provide appropriate infrastructure. In the ecosystem of Hamburg, we are starting right now to use the existing gas system 60 kilometers away from the present grid, which shall be restructured to a scale of 20 to 25 so that hydrogen can be made available everywhere. Hence, the economies of scale we always need in this context will certainly come to bear. Hence, the ecosystem does not only mean that we reach prices because of the economies of scale and the cooperation of various partners, which really use hydrogen in an economic way. And at the same time, we can tackle quite a few projects which we can handle on this common basis. There are many users, a large number of users in Hamburg, and they have also developed their own projects all the while. Of course, we also need production for this purpose, which is a starting point for the use in all areas. And we are fortunate, and it's known to many of you, that we have the power station of Marburg, which is now rededicated. And in an early phase already, we'll have 100 megawatt available, but we also have 80 kV connection. And in the harbor, with growing volumes, we can also provide facilities for exportation. And within the scope of the European procedures for IPCEI, European Common Interest, we have been working, and on the chart you can see that the idea of ecosystem comes to bear. Hence, with providing hydrogen from green sources through Marburg in the first phases, so this can be extended to various other areas, also in importation. And I'll present a few more individual projects considering the entire system, and we only have it in Hamburg in this unique way at the moment. Of course, we mainly talk about mobility today, and thus the various types of use, instead of the pure focus on the road, there are various potential uses also in aviation or in maritime applications. We heard the presentation by the MAN, which is very exciting, and this can also be considered for this purpose. And alongside with aviation and the shipping industry, there are many other additional possible applications at the moment limited to the local level, but which can be extended also to regional and international levels, supplying local needs with the right mobility, but also large-scale applications going beyond the scope of Hamburg. But we have a real lab, as we call it, already now, where all the potential uses can be tested, and we can safeguard the availability of hydrogen with an infrastructure which can be developed in a simple way for a start. Now, my few examples. Alongside with road-borne applications, we also know from industry where hydrogen can be used on different time horizons. When talking about hydrogen, this, of course, alongside with the actual hydrogen, it also means the respective derivatives we need to talk about. A typical example can be seen here. For 2035, Airbus has planned the commercial use of green hydrogen in aircrafts. But in the previous years, there are different paths where hydrogen can be used by the appropriate derivatives. And thus, in this area of aviation, depending on the design of the application, be it long-distance flights or shorter flights, it can be used accordingly. And according to another discussion, we also talk about the status of aggregate, and there's a clear orientation, as we can see in many other places too. We have just talked about the maritime sector for liquid hydrogen. Still another example is our port authority. In the years to come, to a larger extent, ships of the fleet of Hamburg will be used in various applications on behalf of the government, for example. But we do not only think about the use of ships in the harbor, but we also want to qualify ourselves. We are doing this just now regarding the warehousing and storage capacities for being able to land the hydrogen where it is needed. And as a harbor, Hamburg is always a logistics hub, and there's a lot of transport taking place in the harbor, a lot of goods traffic, and now hydrogen locomotives, entire trains can not only be used in the transport of persons, but also in the shipping industry. Hence, this illustrates the entire bandwidth which we try to realize in various projects. And all those dealing with logistics in the harbor, using the right reach stackers, supply with cranes and so forth, forklifts, the entire set, but also reaching into logistics. The HHLA is intensive exchange also for the vehicle industry. In short intervals, trucks will also get into Hamburg and the Hamburg harbor, and they can be supplied with hydrogen in the future. So it's not only the preparation to see to it that hydrogen can be made available in large volumes, but also to use it in our own vehicle fleets. one of the first ones who thought about operating ships with hydrogen, you may recall, it was a ferry in Hamburg, but on the Ulster River, a sister company of the HARBOUR, in charge of long-distance traffic in the Hamburg harbour, and they are now underway to provide the first 3 complete ships to such an extent that they can also work with hydrogen and fuel cells in the near future. And after a test phase, when the necessary experience is available, the entire fleet will be retrofitted for the traffic in the harbour. Apart from that, there's also the step towards goods traffic. The Electra is a push boat operating between Hamburg and Berlin mainly, and to a major extent, it will take smaller boats with this boat in order to supply the local industries. Still another example we have is the Klingenberg company. They are doing container taxi traffic in the harbour already now, and the containers are taken to the right place also with such a push boat, which is now also in the preparation phase. Another story which is moving to and fro time and again is the Hamburg Hochbahn, also working on hydrogen very intensively. In the Hochbahn, we now have 50 fuel cell buses in a tender, and the decision shall be taken shortly where those vehicles shall be used and who shall supply them. That's about solo buses of 12 and 18 meters length. And as you may know, alongside with a growing fleet of battery-operated buses, wherever larger distances need to be covered daily or where we need larger vehicles like articulated buses, the hydrogen and fuel cell technology offered essential advantages. A few more examples of smaller applications within Hamburg Airport. Everything which has to do with the transportation of goods is considered, and it shall be rededicated to fuel cell and hydrogen-operated facilities. We also have clean logistics, also dealing with these matters, people doing fleet operation, and now rededicating their vehicles to hydrogen and fuel cells. The Stadtreinigung now also equips their waste disposal vehicles. They do their first experience with fuel cell operated and hydrogen operated vehicles. And with the adaptation of the gas grid, there will also be fast availability locally to make sure that hydrogen is always available. On top of that, in the context of aviation, I mentioned synthetic kerosene. That is also considered producing green hydrogen with kerosene. Through various companies in logistics, we are in intensive exchange with the producers, the manufacturers of large vehicles, and they can also be used in fleets in the Hamburg harbour. We also talk about green hydrogen within the scope of refinery and the like. So let me point to the fact deliberately that we have developed an exemplified system, and within mobility, and apart from that, in many other applications, this comes to bear, and it shows the advantage of hydrogen. For example, comparing it to the battery technology, it's like a pocket knife system, like a Swiss pocket knife, which is highly flexible in various areas of infrastructure. And of course, local production and importation can be used as a healthy foundation for economies of scale and reliable supply. And Well, this example shows how in a local network these things can be considered, especially after overcoming the infant stages within the scope of mobility and in other applications and for the sake of mobility. Well, that was my quick run through this presentation. And of course, if you have questions, you have my personal information.